He never dreamed of becoming just famous. He wanted to be a legend, and he succeeded. To many, the name Farrokh Bulsara will mean absolutely nothing, unlike his world-famous pseudonym, Freddie Mercury. His life was full of contradictions. On the one hand, there was a shy and closed nature, and on the other, charisma, passion for chic, noisy parties, and love without obligations. How did a boy from a religious family from the distant island of Zanzibar conquer the world stage? Who did he call his wife, although he was never officially married? And how did the great Freddie Mercury spend the last months of his life? You are on the Enco Stories channel. Get comfortable, because we're about to start. On September 5, 1946, the future star of show business, Farrokh Bulsara, was born in the Stone City, which was one of the oldest districts of the island of Zanzibar. His father, Bohemian Bulsara, was an accountant in the High Court of England and Wales. The husband earned quite well, so the family had everything they needed. 6 years later, Farrokh had a younger sister named Kashmira. Their mother, Jer Bulsara, devoted herself to housekeeping and raising 2 children. The real name of our hero, translated from Farsi, meant happy, and probably really gave its blessing to the child's fate. From an early age, he conquered people's hearts with his charming smile, which even the most meticulous judges could not resist. One day, Jer sent a photo of her 1-year-old son to a local contest where it won the first prize. His parents were Parsis and followed a very ancient religion, Zoroastrianism, and their surname came from the name of the island of Valsad, which is north of Bombay. Little Farrokh's parents brought up their children following all Parsi traditions. The family attended various festivals in the Temple of Fire Worshippers, in which Farrokh also underwent a ceremonial initiation into the Zoroastrian faith. Farrokh grew up advanced and curious. He was also very attracted to Western culture with its music and popular magazines that occasionally made their way to their island. The parents decided that such a bright boy would be better off in the closed St. Peter's boarding school. They had several other reasons for sending their 7-year-old son to Bombay. The Bulsaras were from there and left the motherland only because of Bomi's father's work, and family relatives remained in Bombay, and little Farrokh could occasionally visit them on weekends. And also, it was there that the largest community of followers of Zoroastrianism was located. Freddie Mercury will profess this faith all his life. Most people won't know it because Zoroastrians do not practice praying with non-believers and discussing spiritual topics with them. However, some historians noted the influence of Zoroastrianism on the musician's work. For example, in some poses on the covers that resembled prayer rooms, in the symbols in music videos, and the eternal confrontation of angels and demons in some of his songs. For example, in My Fairy King. But let's go back to his childhood. Perhaps it was the separation from his parents at such a young age that influenced Farrokh's rather distant behavior. He rarely shared with his loved ones the difficulties he had to face in his independent life. Despite this, he, like all people, had the tendency to idealize that period of his life, which he would talk about more than once in interviews. I was a precocious child. My parents thought boarding school would do me good, so they sent me to one when I was 7. I look back on it and I think it was marvelous. You learn to look after yourself, and it taught me to have responsibility. There's no doubt that such a talented boy has proven himself as a capable student. This was confirmed by the preserved letters from the school, in which Farrokh's good academic performance was noted. Since childhood, he had this love for creativity. He loved to draw and gladly gave his works to friends and relatives. Rumor had it they were quite good and skillful. Among sports, Farrokh liked tennis, hockey, and boxing. At the age of 10, he received the title of school champion in table tennis, and at the age of 12, he won the youth all-around. But his main passion was music, and to be more precise, his passion for singing. Farrokh devoted all his time to the school choir, which was hard not to notice. The boy loved to sing so much that the school principal wrote a letter to his parents in which he strongly recommended their son should attend piano lessons and even help pay for them so that they would be acceptable to the family. So music turned from a simple hobby into something more serious. Despite the fact that since childhood Farrokh was a bright boy with a unique talent, he behaved very shyly in everyday life. Farang Irani, Freddie's school friend, recalled, "He was an introvert, but he could also be quite a clown when he wanted to, like Jerry Lewis, the famous comedian of those days. He was very much a loner, happiest when he was playing the piano or in the art school." His love for Western music only grew over time, so besides the piano, the 12-year-old decided to learn to play the guitar. Rock and roll became a real Farrokh's passion, so the boy and his friends assembled a real band with a very unusual name for those times, especially within the framework of the school. The Hectics. This is how one of Freddie's former classmates remembered those times. He could play anything. He had the unique ability to listen to a song on the radio just once and be able to play it perfectly. He could sing anything from rock and roll to classical music. For example, apart from the Hectics, he was also part of a Western classical music band at school where 3 boys would sing in 3 different keys, and that is probably one of the reasons for the eclectic sound he created for Queen in later years. If we go into details, the official founder of the band was 12-year-old Bruce Murray, but it was Farouk who became the heart of the band. Even then, he looked like a real star compared to the others, was the lead singer of the Hectics, and played the guitar. Famous musicians of the 50s, Fabian, Ricky Nelson, Fats Domino, as well as the Little Richard and Elvis Presley became ideological inspirations for the creativity of newbie musicians. It looks like this. Cheap guitars, a drum, and a box to which they attached a string so that this structure could serve as a substitute for a bass. It was very difficult to call the sounds that were produced music, but the teenagers were not embarrassed by this because their main goal was to be popular with girls. And it worked, because the musicians quickly gained popularity and gathered almost all Panchgani students at their concerts. But the main reason for our success was Freddie. He was the only real musician among us, said Farang Irani, who was one of the Hectics members, in an interview. The 5 boys had an outrageous appearance. The dyed curled hair, thin ties, tight pants, and pointy-toed shoes. The Hectics did not neglect any opportunity to perform and show off, and participated in all school activities. Freddie, so shy and quiet in life, became incredibly temperamental and fiery on stage, and his artistry was admired. All band members admitted that without him they would not have gained such popularity among local students. Although the boys had innate abilities, studying musical notation was not such an easy task for him. He devoted all his free time and himself to writing his new hits. At this time, he began to call himself Freddie so that his English-speaking friends will find it easier to pronounce his name. This change was also influenced by the fashion for Western culture. Despite his success in studies and music, Freddie's school life was not so sweet. As an adult, he recalled, "All the things they say about boarding schools are more or less true. All the bullying and everything else. I've had the odd schoolmaster chasing me. It's going through life." Besides all of it was the peers bullying because of the singer's famous smile. This was Freddie's congenital feature, as 4 extra teeth grew in the back of his mouth, which over time were increasingly pressing on the others. Because of this, the boy developed malocclusion. Of course, this feature did not escape the attention of his peers, for which they awarded the young man with the nickname Bucky and constantly teased him. Unfortunately, this ridicule accompanied Freddie throughout his life. The boy constantly tried to pull his upper lip, cover his mouth with a microphone. He was very shy, tried to smile less often, or covered his mouth with his hand. According to one version, this is precisely why he let go of his famous mustache in order to distract attention from his unusual smile. By the way, on the contrary, they annoyed the fans for some time, so they sent whole packages of razors to the recording studio. But after becoming famous and wealthy, Mercury decided not to change anything in his smile. He feared that surgery might alter his 4-octave vocal range, although doctors assured him otherwise. But Freddie really believed that it was these 4 extra teeth that widened his palate and made his voice louder and more powerful. But let's go back to school times. Although the music lessons occasionally interfered with his studies, which his teachers were not very happy with, Freddie successfully completed a piano course and received a 4th degree in theory and practice. But the future star failed the final exams at the secondary school. At the age of 16, Freddie returned home to his parents, but at the same time, life in his native Zanzibar changed dramatically. Great Britain recognized its independence and mass uprisings began on the island. All Indian residents of the Sultanate, including the Bulsara family, had 6 months to leave Zanzibar. The family immigrated to England, where they first stayed with relatives in Feltham, West Middlesex. Later, they bought their own house and began to rebuild their lives. A young man of Parsi origin was very different from British teenagers. Freddie recovered from his old life and got acquainted with the new world, having rather mixed feelings. "After all, I grew up in India. There I saw poverty everywhere, but here, you can only think about poverty." Freddie's new look consisted of a voluminous hairstyle, torn jeans, and a tattered t-shirt. He quickly adapted and began to enjoy his unusual style. Mercury's innate charisma attracted people. He quickly found friends with whom he went out and had fun, but such passion for nightclubs caused his parents dissatisfaction. Education was also one of the reasons for conflicts in the family. Freddie stubbornly refused to get a more serious and promising profession, in his parents' opinion. He insisted on being exclusively creative rather than some kind of static lawyer or accountant. However, they managed to find a compromise. Mercury began a 2-year course studying art at Isleworth Polytechnic in West London. Classmates warmly greeted the charming young man, and Freddie, in order to match their style, wore tight pants and short jackets, although they were quite small for him. Freddie joined the choir in college and got a part in the Christmas production. He did not stop practicing playing the keyboard and writing songs. After receiving a diploma, the future star continued his studies and learned graphics and illustration at Ealing Art College. He admired Jimi Hendrix. His work inspired Freddie so much that the young man decided to dedicate his thesis to it. In college, the young man opened up more and more and showed his extraordinary nature. He didn't mind making some strange and unusual outfit out of a tablecloth and just wearing it to attend class. Many people think I have a foul temper, but I like to be ambiguous and surround myself with complex, conflicted sons of bitches. In the company of impeccable people, I would be bored. There, Freddie met the equally unusual and talented David Bowie. When he came to the college for a concert, Fred helped with the musical equipment and made something like a stage out of the dining tables. David couldn't help but notice Mercury and was very impressed. It was a truly legendary meeting from which their communication began. Do you want to know more about the creative path and life of Bowie or other favorite celebrities? Write about it in the comments. We always welcome your feedback and wishes. After graduation, Freddie decided to start living separately. This was also because of the conflicts with a neighbor due to loud music. He rented an apartment in London. Now Freddie had another problem because he had to find a job and make a living. Freddie did not leave his music studies and became a member of the blues band Ibex, which on his initiative received a new name, Wreckage. Once the band performed at his own Ealing College, even then the singer behaved outrageously. In a white suit with a pink silk scarf, he took off the microphone and hung it around his neck, lay down and did anything to attract attention. After the band's breakup, the musician was part of the Oxford band Sour Milk Sea for a while, but in 1970, they also broke up. A turning point in his creative path was meeting Tim Staffel. They were once roommates. Tim studied at Imperial College and was the guitarist for the band 1984, which later became known as The Smile. Freddie got to know all the band members and often attended their concerts as a spectator. Having befriended the trio, the musician fit into their environment and was even present at rehearsals. It was difficult to call the band successful, although at that time the musicians already had their own songs. Their 1969 US single Earth/Step on Me was quickly forgotten after a concert at the Marquee Club in London in December that year. Eventually, Tim Staffel decided to leave the team due to his problems with studies, and Freddie took his place. The unusual appearance of the young man, his sense of style and love for everything outrageous attracted the musicians' interest. But most of all, Brian May and Roger Taylor liked the mannerism and sarcastic humor of the new band member. May recalled, "Even back then, Freddie knew he would be a star. His pockets were empty and there was no sense of any success. There was not even a hope of success, but this did not stop him. He went his own way and remained himself." Freddie quickly showed his leadership and gained authority. He again did not like the band name and suggested changing it to Queen. This name was simple and strong for him at the same time. He considered it unsurpassed. This also showed the musician's love for everything pompous and the desire for royal recognition. But music at that time did not yet meet the financial needs of the future legend, and he still had to try his hand at completely non-creative jobs. Mercury managed to work as a loader at Heathrow Airport, which British Airways is still very proud of. According to some media, colleagues immediately drew attention to Freddie's graceful hands, which did not correspond at all to such hard work. He revealed that he was actually a musician, and after that, the other porters would often take on some of Fred's work and help the nice fellow. He also sold secondhand goods and sundries in Kensington Market, including paintings by Ealing students and his thesis. Freddie did this with Roger Taylor. Taylor recalls, "Back then, I didn't really know him as a singer. He was just my mate, my crazy mate. If there was fun to be had, Freddie and I were usually involved." In the same market, fate again brought him together with David Bowie. Rumor had it the latter was looking for new shoes, but he did not have enough money for the ones that David liked. Freddie decided to gift Bowie with a pair of shoes from his counter. Queen gradually gained momentum, and in 1971, the musicians took part in a Yes concert, where they played as a warm-up. In the same year, bassist John Deacon joined them. It was in this ensemble that the incredible 20-year history of the Royal Band began its countdown. A few months later, on June 27, 1970, the musicians gave their first concert at the Cornwall Red Cross Charity Fund. Around this time, Freddie met Mary Austin, a woman who would become an integral part of his entire life. Austin worked at the fashion boutique Biba, and Brian May introduced them. There was never people like Fred in Mary's circle. The extravagance and unusualness of the young man initially repelled the woman, but later she could not resist Mercury's charms and charisma. During one conversation with journalists, Mary said, quote, "He was very confident, and I have never been confident. We grew together. I liked him, and it went on from there. In 5 months, the couple began to live together in a small room, since the musician did not earn much money at that time. Extraordinary Mercury was attracted to the same charismatic personalities as himself, while Mary was not at all like his other passions. That was why almost no one believed in this couple, even the musician's friends. Writer Leslie Ann Jones, who toured with the band in the 1980s, wrote, "She was the opposite of Freddie. She never really said very much. They were like this old married couple, and they would spend a lot of time in bed, but Mercury would pull the piano to the bedside to write song." Freddie's innate eccentricity made him the heart of the band. He became the embodiment of the charisma. Hendrix and Bowie's outrageousness, with Led Zeppelin's glam rock notes and the modernity of Yes. If the band's music style was already more or less emerging, their image was something that they still needed to work on. Mercury was convinced that everyone should be like a bare nerve, especially the vocalist, although all his ideas would undergo changes more than once. Mercury's studying at Ealing College also paid off. Thanks to the acquired skills, he independently created the well-known Queen's coat of arms. Fred depicted the zodiac signs of each member of the band on the logo. A crab symbolized May, lions dedicated to Deacon and Taylor, and 2 fairies for Mercury himself. It was also a fiery phoenix with outstretched wings above it all, and of course the letter Q and the crown in the center as a reference to the majesty and the band's legendary status. Some analysts found a resemblance to the coat of arms of Great Britain in it, especially in the 2 lions. Freddie was the author of most of the band's singles. Only the Queen's Greatest Hits album included 10 of the 17 songs written by Fred. Although Freddie never considered himself a very good pianist, he had a habit of composing songs using the instrument in unusual positions. He had a piano by his bed, and when inspiration came to the singer, he held out his hand and played what he had heard in his dream without rising from his bed. After the legend's death, namely in 2003, he, along with other band members, would be listed in the Songwriters Hall of Fame for a valuable contribution to the history of music. The musicians had everything they needed: talent and their own songs, but the problem was that they simply had no place to record it all. Without a recording studio, they would not have been able to release any single. Help came from Brian's friend, who worked at Delane Lee. They made a deal with the Queen there. The band could use the studio, but for this, the members had to test its equipment, also play in front of potential customers if necessary, and create at least one song that would attract new musicians to the studio. Roger Taylor said that at the time, Mercury often visited his house. His mother was very fond of Freddie and always noted the neatness of the young man. Fred had his own life hack. He never folded things, but simply put them unfolded under his mattress. During sleep, they were smoothed under the weight of the musician's body and looked as if they had just been ironed. Freddie went by the name Bulsara for a while, but that came to an end. According to Brian May, his own song My Fairy King, which Freddie wrote for the band in 1973, inspired him to get the well-known nickname. The single has the lines, "Mother Mercury, look what they've done to me. I cannot run, I cannot hide." Yes, once a little boy Farouk from Zanzibar finally turned into Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury officially changed the name in 1973. Years of work finally began to pay off, and Queen signed a contract with the label Trident Studios. They continued to work on their first album. Everything did not happen as quickly as they wanted. Difficulties arose because the band could use the recording studio only during its downtime, but after it was left by paid artists, Queen was allowed to use all the modern technologies and work with the team absolutely free of charge. The debut album Queen, known for such songs as Keep Yourself Alive and Seas of Rhye, did not receive incredibly crazy popularity, but confidently put the band in the music arena. The album cover had the inscription, "And no one played the synthesizer," due to the fact that listeners mistook the many different effects of the sound of guitar and vocals for playing on the keyboard. The band began to give independent concerts and went on a tour of the country. Fred explained another circumstance that took so long to release the album. The Queen members were wary of the so-called show business sharks, so for a long time they were looking for a label with which they'd like to cooperate. We've had great offers coming in, but we were careful not to fall for it. We considered all labels before making the final choice. We didn't want them to treat us like an ordinary group. Queen's live performances invoked incredible emotions in the British audience. It was a real sensation. The audience was surprised and at the same time impressed not only by Mercury's powerful voice, but also by his loose and eccentric behavior on stage. The band members wanted a completely new sound that would combine elements of heavy metal and glam rock. All this could be heard already in the first songs of musicians. Fred also joined one of the projects of the Trident Studios label. He performed covers of the tracks I Can Hear Music and Going Back, but under the pseudonym Larry Lyrics. but the company had to stop the show because it did not have any success. Queen wasn't going to stop. They were just gaining momentum. Within a month, they recorded a new record called Queen 2, which was released in 1974. They worked even harder on sound, and this growth was impossible to ignore. Turn on and listen to a mix of ballads, folk, pop, as well as blues, metal, and of course, rock. The band was looking for something original and unique, and as a result, the album received signature harmonies in a special style, and also their first US tour. Queen 2 did not have any specific theme, although it was divided into conventional 2 blocks according to its sound. Side Black included more aggressive compositions reminiscent of the band's first works, and listeners called Side White a demonstration of Queen's pop perfection. This musical opposition of light and darkness is also reflected on the album cover, which was made in black and white tones. On its development, they worked with Mick Rock, who already had joint works with David Bowie and Pink Floyd and was quite famous. The creation of the dark side was inspired by the photos of Marlene Dietrich. The band image, where 4 heads are pressed against each other on a black background, became very famous and was called Singing Heads. This image will also be on Bohemian Rhapsody, which will be recorded in a couple of years. But it was the third album, Sheer Heart Attack, presented in 1974, that brought the band well-deserved fame. The composition Killer Queen, about an elite girl with broad views, became a hit. Fred wrote the lyrics much earlier than the music, unlike most of his other singles. The song took an honorable 2nd place in the British charts and took the 12th place in the USA. It's one thing to have innate talent. It's quite another to know what to do with it. Freddie is the one who knew how to use his talent perfectly. The listeners willingly came in contact with a charismatic musician. Special attention was drawn to the provocative and non-standard band images. Tight spandex, ballet shoes, and unusual hairstyles definitely set them apart from other bands. Crazy show programs should also be added to this. It's no wonder why Queen became so popular.
I personally just have a good time just fooling around on stage, And that's why I'm not afraid to sort of fall flat on my face, because coming out with some of the things I wear sort of over the top. They have an element of humor which I hope comes across. That's basically what it is now. And if I'm seen to be having fun on stage, I think it kind of comes across.
A new Musical Express journalist wrote about Freddie in 1974. Freddie Mercury is just an ordinary guy. You can see how fed up he is with all this talk about how Queen will someday be great. He already considers himself a star, trying on the image of a celebrity like well-tailored pants. No mic stand became Mercury's personal feature. Sometimes it seemed that he was almost a part of the props on the stage and an addition to the productions. And the musician invented this trick completely by accident. Just during one of the performances, the mic stand broke and Fred continued the concert as if nothing had happened. Since then, the no mic stand has become a permanent attribute of each of his performances. Despite the success, the band members continued to live in relative poverty. The problem was in the old contract with Trident, which provided for quite modest fees, and the label was not interested in benefiting the artists. In the end, the contract was terminated and the band found a new manager, John Reid, who, beside them, also collaborated with Elton John. Reid said to the Queens, "I'll take care of the business, you make the best record you can." And they really did. Queen's 4th album, A Night at the Opera in 1975, turned the band members into true superstars. They worked on it for 4 months. Each of the participants contributed to the single's creation. Freddie wrote 5 songs, May wrote 4, and Taylor and Deacon wrote 1 each. After so many years of experimenting with styles, they finally had their own unique sound. But the main hit of the album was the legendary Bohemian Rhapsody. The 6-minute-long rock operetta reveals the full power of Freddie Mercury's 4-octave voice. Bohemian Rhapsody is a mixture of hard rock, opera, and ballad. Fred worked on the song independently, for which the other members jokingly called it Fred's thing. The musicians recorded their parts separately and had no idea how they would sound until the final mix. Rhapsody can be divided into 6 separate passages that are not divided into choruses or verses. The video clip also had its highlight because the superimposition of faces and shots was something new at that time.
In fact, I love the challenge. I love the challenge, and I like doing things that are not part of the mainstream for me. And sometimes if that works, it works in a very big way. Otherwise it can be a very big flop, but I'm willing to take that risk.
Before the single officially became part of the 4th record, Freddie gave the song to his friend Kenny Everett. At that time, he was quite a famous radio DJ. Kenny was initially skeptical of Rhapsody. He simply did not believe that a song 3 times longer than the average track would have any success. But after listening, the DJ did not hold back his emotions. "Forget it, it'll be #1 forever," he told Freddie, and it was true. Although in order for this to happen, the author had to win back its place under the sun. At first, radio stations refused to broadcast the song, again after the same 6 minutes. But stubborn Fred did not agree to shorten the Rhapsody. He knew they managed to create something legendary and unique. This feeling brought him great pleasure. We allow ourselves a little extra on every album, but that's what Queen is all about. At a certain point, we understand that we want to go beyond what is allowed. They received worldwide fame, the first places in the British charts and the top 10 in America as a result. In 2002, Bohemian Rhapsody was even listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the best song in history. After the record release in 1975, the band went on tour. One of the countries where they performed was Japan, which left an indescribable mark on the hearts of musicians. Brian May recalled, "We've had some success in England and the US, but we've never seen such fanaticism and adoration. Suddenly in Japan, we began to feel like real stars, like the Beatles and Bay City Rollers. People greeted us with shouts of delight, which was news to us." Fred took his mother with him on the trip. Before one of the concerts, he went on stage and asked the audience to hold up their flashlights and lighters to show his mother what the stadium looks like when all the fans hold flashlights above their heads. He said, "Mom, look at this. It's the most beautiful view in the world." And then he started singing Love of My Life. Mercury was delighted with the people, lifestyle, and art of Japan. Later, he even arranged a separate room in his apartment decorated in Japanese style. It was completely filled with antiques. It was his place of solitude and rest. This was a kind of tribute to the country which he liked so much. It was at this time that Queen finally started making money. Before that, they spent almost all their fees on terminating past and unnecessary contracts, as it was with the Trident. The release of subsequent records, such as A Day at the Races in 1976, News of the World in 1978, the album The Game, which was released in 1980, and others, only increased the band's popularity. A Day at the Races is the band's first self-produced album. It was a sequel to A Night at the Opera, which received a flurry of criticism as if there was nothing new in it. But this did not prevent the album from settling again on the first places of the world charts, in particular in the same Japan, as well as in Holland and Great Britain. And the hits We Are the Champions, Don't Stop Me Now, and We Will Rock You became top hits and sounded at the end of every Queen's concert. A landmark in Freddie's life was a performance at a charity evening with the Royal Ballet. It was a musician's longtime dream, which was lucky enough to come true on October 7, 1979. Ambitious and proud Mercury was willing to agree to a cameo as this event was so important to him. He performed Bohemian Rhapsody and Crazy Little Thing Called Love in front of 2,000 people. But no popularity, and especially of such a scale, does not come without loud headlines and unpleasant long reads. More and more attention was paid to Fred's personal life, and the public eagerly craved interesting details. This could not help burdening the musician. There would be no revelations in his rather rare interviews. All that could be seen there was only deep sadness. The first blow to the band's reputation came from Mercury's fiery temper. His eccentricity began to play against the bohemian image.
It's the media basically built me up being a real ogre and a tyrant on stage, because the way I come across on stage, I'm very volatile, and that's the only part they see of me. I mean, if I don't talk to everybody, so they don't really know the real me, and I don't think anybody will. And
how does it show itself?
I have tantrums. If something's not going right, I throw things. I could destroy a room in about 3 seconds. I used to be able to, but I don't do that anymore.
More and more, their creativity was turning from a hobby into a big business. We became businessmen, contrary to our best aspirations, but it always accompanies success, said Mercury. At this time, he started producing Peter Straker, opened a car company, and worked on other projects. I live a busy life. My job brings me a lot of joy, but it's still my job and I take it very seriously. And when you are tense and very serious, then outwardly you give the impression of a heavy, quarrelsome person, Freddie explained. The changes also affected Mercury's personal life. He was in a relationship with Mary for almost 7 years. Although they were very close and called themselves husband and wife, both of them still felt something was missing. In 1973, the musician proposed to the girl. When I was 23, he gave me a big box on Christmas Day. Inside was another box, then another, and so it went on. It was like one of his playful games. Eventually, I found a lovely jade ring inside the last small box. Out of surprise, Mary didn't even immediately remember which finger to wear the wedding ring on, but as a result, she answered yes. However, the relationship was getting worse and worse. Mary knew that something was going on and felt a kind of tug on Fred's neck. When the woman dared to directly ask Mercury a question about marriage and potential children, he replied, "What kind of father will I be?" The argument ended with the showman admitting that he is bisexual. Mercury has never officially commented on his orientation, but with Mary, he could be honest. This conversation was a release for each of them. The woman finally realized what was really happening. "I'll never forget that moment," she recalled. "Although I do remember saying to him at the time, 'No, Freddie, I don't think you are bisexual. I think you are gay.'" Mary calmed down, and Fred was finally able to feel free. Fred and Mary ended their romantic relationship but remained close friends for life. The showman bought a place for the woman not far from his house, but Mary still spent most of her time at the Mercury's home at Garden Lodge. She was a member of his family, and although they never had an official marriage, he called her his only wife. Fred bequeathed most of his $28 million fortune in a house in Kensington to the woman. He was pleased with the thought that she would live there with her children. By the way, Fred became her son's godfather. "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible. The only friend I've got is Mary, and I don't want anybody else. To me, she was my common-law wife. To me, it was a marriage. We believe in each other. That's enough for me." Mary believed that Fred was gay. Yes, he did have relationships with men such as audio engineer Paul Printer, German restaurateur Winfried Winnie Kirchberger, chef Joe Fanelli, and DHL courier Tony Baston. But gay is not a correct judgment because among his passions were also women. In the 1980s, Mercury had an affair with German actress Barbara Valentine. Fred also did not neglect one-night stands. In particular, this happened during his touring.
Go around the world and live in hotels, and that can be very lonely. But then I look upon it and I don't want people to say, I just say that's my life. And it can be a very lonely, it can be a very lonely life. But I mean, I chose it.
There were more and more men in Fred's life. He visited gay clubs in New York and Munich, calling himself a sex machine ready to be charged, talked about his sexual appetites, and had casual romantic relationships without commitment. It was fairly obvious when the visitors to Freddie's dressing room started to change from hot chicks to hot men. Ryan May shared his memories in an interview in 2017. But Mercury has never openly talked about his sexual orientation. Perhaps he was afraid that such openness could negatively affect his career, or even end it altogether and affect the band. He wanted his music to be heard. He was afraid to divert the attention of his fans from himself. At that time, the topic of homosexual relations was a taboo. According to some fans' versions and some media, his veiled coming out was Bohemian Rhapsody, as if in it Mercury was finally able to accept his own sexual orientation, and the line from the single "Mama Just Killed a Man" hints at saying goodbye to old Fred. But the musician himself never confirmed that. And to all the journalists' questions about what exactly he put into the legendary single, Fred answered, "I will tell you no more than any other poet about my work. Everyone finds something special there." By the way, rumor has it that one day Freddie hung out in a gay bar with Princess Diana dressed like a man. At least that's what actress Cleo Rocos said. According to her, the princess wore a cap, camouflage jacket, and dark glasses, and she spent the entire evening in the company of the musician and his friends at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern. Freddie liked the luxurious life and freedom. More and more often, he plunged into the vortex of crazy parties. His 41st birthday is still called one of the most striking examples of chic and excessiveness. Almost 700 guests, among whom were world stars such as Kylie Minogue, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bon Jovi, and others. Hundreds of bottles of the most expensive sparkling wine, fireworks, and fiery dances. Such living increasingly became a musician's everyday life. He spared no money in his art collections, once purchasing hand-painted porcelain for more than $400,000. His home was like a museum, decorated with exquisite and rare furniture, paintings, and other antiques that Fred collected.
I'm extremely rich.
Do you like being rich?
Of course.
What do you do with your
I
money?
flaunt it.
What do you do with your money?
I spend it.
I'm spending money, and it's damn exciting. Accumulating wealth was not about him. The singer allowed himself any whims, and once asked that the Cartier store be opened for him personally. Fred walked around the store, but according to him, he felt like a socialite like Zsa Zsa Gabor. He was also generous to his loved ones. Fred spent thousands of pounds renovating his young sister Kashmira's kitchen. Mary Austin said, "I think Freddie reached a stage where he thought he was invincible. He convinced himself he was having a good time, and maybe in part he was, but I think in part he wasn't. I think he'd stopped being honest with himself. Many of his so-called friends were there for the free tickets, the free booze, the free drugs, the free meal, the gossip, and, of course, the expensive gifts." Among Mercury's many friends, one of the closest was Elton John. The latter said that Freddie saved his life by talking him into rehab when his drug addiction got out of control. Freddie's personal assistant, Peter Freestone, mentioned that they missed seeing each other quite often because both of them, Queen and Elton, were just non-stop touring, and they were rarely in the same city at the same time. But every now and then it would happen, and they would get together, and there would be just no stopping and just talking for hours and hours, just to catch up on what has happened since last Sunday. They even made up affectionate names for each other that were their drag queen alter egos. Elton John was Sharon, and Mercury was Melina. Their other friends also had similar names. Brian May and Roger Taylor were Maggie and Liz, respectively. Rod Stewart was reportedly christened Phyllis. In the early 80s, Mercury ditched his bright leotards, let go of his famous mustache, and changed his hair. Simultaneously with the frontman's new image, the band's music was also undergoing changes. Well-rehearsed performances on huge platforms made Queen a real phenomenon. In 1980, the band released their 8th studio album, The Game, which differed from others in its jazz motifs. In it, the musicians tried to go beyond their own limits as much as possible. This is the only record that reached the first position in the USA. The musicians went on a world tour during which they played 70 concerts. It was not easy for Fred. He constantly repeated that he was tired from touring. But knowing his inconsistent nature, the other members simply did not believe him. But in 1982, the Queens took a break and went on a short vacation. Later, May will say that at some point they all kind of hated each other a little. The constant public attention and unpleasant articles published about them over and over again tired and irritated the musicians. Each of them gradually began to engage in solo projects. Mercury believed that this was due to the endless routine, which caused the band to give up their position.
There was a time where we were doing tours so extensively, because we would go into a studio, make an album, and then tour the world, and then we'd go back, and that was the routine. I didn't have any time to actually break away, and we virtually did that for about 8 or 9 years. And that's why the last couple of years we wanted to break away from that format, because I was getting very bored, and so were the others, and just to get away and do different things and think about certain things.
All band members were talented musicians. Each of them wrote songs and wanted their own development. Because of this, the tension between them only grew. Freddie understood their aspirations, but the band became hostage to the image of the four-headed Hydra, and it was not so easy to get rid of. Besides, they were all strongly connected with each other.
4 of us sort of write very different songs, and so it's kind of, it keeps us going. If everybody wrote the same kind of thing and we all appeal to the same kind of people and everything, then it would be a bit boring. We just have 4 totally diverse personalities and different egos, and then that runs riot, and that's good. So we still fight. We still fight like kids.
Freddie began his solo career. He started collaborating with the Musicland studio in Munich. Mercury recorded his first single, created with the participation of composer Giorgio Moroder, Love Kills, in 1984. The song became part of the soundtrack of the restored silent film by Fritz Lang, Metropolis. The film also won the Golden Raspberry Award for the alleged worst soundtrack, and Love Kills was nominated in the Worst Original Song category. Nevertheless, the single reached number 10 in the UK charts, although Fred never performed it in his concerts. Freddie Mercury had several joint singles with Michael Jackson. The two kings were bound by friendship and mutual admiration. Michael attended the band's concerts and visited Fred backstage. Once, a reporter of the Rolling Stone magazine asked Jackson if he was a fan of Queen, to which he replied, "I'm a fan of Freddie Mercury." From 1981 to 1983, they worked together on the singles State of Shock, There Must Be More to Life Than This, and Victory. However, the work came to a dead end. They were great songs, but the problem was time, as we were both very busy at that period. Eventually, State of Shock was released in 1984 as part of Michael Jackson's new album, and There Must Be More to Life Than This was reworked by Mercury as a solo composition for his solo album, Mr. Bad Guy. Various sources say that during the creative collaboration, the world legends began to conflict with each other. According to his manager, Freddie complained that Michael came to the studio every day with his llama. Jackson, in turn, accused Mercury of using illegal substances. Another stellar collaboration was Queen's joint track with David Bowie, Under Pressure. As well as with Jackson, the artists had quite a few discussions during the recording of the song. But fortunately, they did finish the job. The song reached number 1 in the UK singles chart, becoming Queen's second domestic hit and Bowie's third. As for the relationship between the two performers, apparently they have cooled down a bit. But David Bowie had the same respect for Mercury. Of all the more theatrical performers, Freddie took it further than the rest. He took it over the edge. And of course, I always admire a man who wears tights. In 1985, the world saw Mr. Bad Guy, Mercury's first solo album. 2 tracks from it, Made in Heaven and I Was Born to Love You, were later re-recorded by him as part of Queen's for the joint album Made in Heaven in 1995.
Album of my own, and Roger's done 2 already, so I think most people thought that I would be the first one to have a solo album, and then the band, Queen would break up and all that. But here you are, after 13 years, four old ladies are still rocking away.
You will never guess who Freddie dedicated this record to. He captioned it, "To my cat Jerry," as well as Tom, Oscar, and Tiffany, and all cat lovers in the entire universe, to hell with everyone else. Yes, Mercury adored his cats. Moreover, during his departures, he even called the furries to talk to them. According to Taylor, Mercury had no great desire to pursue a solo career. Rather, he worked simply for profit. He missed us a little. He called me, and I had to fly to Munich to record his backing vocals. Taylor recalled, but this did not prevent Mr. Bad Guy to be in the best UK charts and stay there for 23 weeks. How did the famous band reunite? And why does its legendary frontman have such a tragic fate? Before we move on, we want you to take a moment, subscribe to our channel, and press the bell button so you don't miss new, interesting stories about your favorite celebrities. Ready? Then let's continue. Mid-80s. At that time, Queen began to be considered veterans of the music industry, and the band's commercial status was declining. Although the band still managed to gather stadiums, their last albums failed to enter the top 20 of the American charts. Nevertheless, they still had many fans. The date of July 13, 1985, went down in history. Queen took part in the Live Aid concert. It was a grand show that gathered 75,000 spectators and was attended by many stars such as Elton John, Paul McCartney, David Bowie, Black Sabbath, Sting, U2, and others. And it was Queen who surpassed everyone. In one performance, the musicians played all their most famous songs. The result is 17 minutes of incredible pleasure. A charity concert dedicated to raising funds for famine victims in Ethiopia was shown around the world. Mercury said that he was not doing that out of any sense of guilt in any way, but on the contrary, he was proud of his invitation and the fact that he could join such an event. Despite their status and self-confidence, they say that the band was very nervous before the performance itself. Queen were used to working out every element of their show to the fullest, but they were afraid whether the existing equipment would withstand such a load. The excitement was added by the fact that it was not their solo concert, and therefore the audience was quite different and might not meet them with delight. But they had the same ace up their sleeve, whose name was Freddie Mercury. His innate talent to charm everyone around played into the band's hands. This performance was called the best. Without eccentric and bright costumes, dressed in a simple t-shirt, Fred made the crowd go crazy. Wembley Stadium chanted, "We will rock you" in unison. This breakthrough will inspire the Queens to create the hit One Vision. After this concert, Queen received a new wave of popularity, and their albums were once again sold in millions of copies. Changes in Fred's personal life did not go unnoticed. He met a man with whom his relationship would last until death. Once, in one of the gay bars, he met the hairdresser Jim Hutton. Their romance would last 6 years. "We were both wearing a tight white vest, ice blue jeans. Then he said, 'How big is your c-?'" Mercury often used the last trick to get to know someone. In an interview, Hutton mentioned that when they first met, he had no idea who Freddie really was. The chef of the Star told the man that he is the front man of the band Queen. "My preference was for meatier men. From the waist down, Freddie was a swizzle stick, but there was something about him," said Jim. But Fred, on the contrary, was fascinated by Hutton. He almost pursued the man and persistently offered him to start a relationship. In the end, it turned out his way, because it was impossible to resist Mercury's charms.
That's what my love is. I think my love is dangerous.
Although the couple began living together in Garden Lodge in 1986, the musician continued to have short-term affairs on the side, as well as to use illegal substances, although in a much smaller amount than before, as his lover recalls. Hutton quit his previous job and started working as Mercury's gardener. The musician paid him £600 a month for this. Work, Hutton, and family. These three parts of his life, Fred tried to separate as much as possible. Therefore, his family members perceived Jim only as Mercury's employee. He might have worried about how coming out would have affected him professionally, but he didn't say that. We both thought our relationship and being gay was our business. Hutton will be with Fred until his last breath, and after the performer's death, he will write a book of memories called Mercury and I. In 1986, Queen went on the Magic Tour in support of the album A Kind of Magic. They performed again at Wembley in front of a 100,000 crowd. Although at that time Fred's health had deteriorated significantly, on stage he always forgot about everything in the world and gave his best. Mercury performed all his hits and, as befits a true king, came out to the crowd dressed in his signature robe and with a crown in his hands. The tour ended with a concert in Knebworth House in Hertfordshire, which they played on August 9th. At that time, no one knew that this was basically the last performance of the Queens with their legendary frontman. Mercury complained more and more about his health, although no one knew the true reasons for such a health state. During this period, Freddie was secluded. He distanced himself from all but a small group of close friends he could trust. It got to the point where Mercury fired almost all of his assistants and staff, leaving only one housekeeper. Austin visited him, and Hutton was also there. The casual one-night stands also stopped. It is not known whether he behaved this way because he foresaw inevitable disaster. But in his interviews, he said that it was only a desire for peace and solitude, as well as creative realization of his excitement. Sex is fun, but I'm done with it. Practicalism won in me, and I don't miss my past life at all. The first rumors about the singer's illness began to spread in 1986. The newspapers wrote that Freddie was spotted taking an HIV test. The interview of other band members on one of the radio stations, where the Queens said that Freddie had major health problems, added reasons for loud headlines. But nobody knew Mercury's diagnosis at the time, and the musician was not going to confirm any suspicions. Instead, he decided to dive further into his solo career. Mercury recorded 2 tracks for the 1986 musical Time, the self-titled Time and In My Defense. And a year later, he presented a cover of a song by the Platters, the track called The Great Pretender. Fred was a longtime admirer of opera, especially Montserrat Caballé. He attended several of her concerts, and when they met in Barcelona, he gave the opera diva a cassette with his songs. Caballé liked them so much that the singer even performed one of them during her performance in London. Barcelona was chosen as the venue for the next Olympic Games, for which Fred and Montserrat were to record a song, but instead of one track, they released a whole album. The first joint performance of 2 legendary and seemingly incompatible performers took place during the music festival in Ibiza at KU Club. There they performed the track Barcelona, and in October 1988 at the La Nit Festival in Barcelona, the creative tandem performed, besides the aforementioned, 2 more hits, Golden Boy and How Can I Go On.
Start the celebrations.
Unfortunately, this was Fred's last performance. At that time, he already had his confirmed diagnosis, HIV. A new disease shook America in the early 80s. People were gripped by panic. No one understood how terrible it was. When Freddie first developed symptoms, he chose to ignore them, despite the fact that some of his past lovers had died of AIDS at that time. According to various publications, there are 2 versions of how Freddie found out about his diagnosis. According to the first, he had a wound on his tongue. Then Mercury apparently went to take tests at the clinic where he was caught by journalists, but he later told the press that he had received a negative result. Other publications say that he had a spot on his hand and his health became worse. Fred, formerly energetic, felt tired all the time. He refused to go to the hospital, perhaps because he did not want to hear the terrible truth. Mary Austin, who was one of the first to find out of Mercury's diagnosis, insisted. The musician was afraid to pick up the phone from the doctor, and Mary did it instead. The spot turned out to be a sarcoma. It was one of HIV's symptoms. It is impossible to find out who exactly infected the performer. He had a lot of casual sexual relationships. Though HIV is incurable, and now thanks to modern medicine, you can live long and well with it. In those days, there was no such possibility. When Freddie told Jim Hutton that he was HIV positive, he also mentioned that he would understand if the man left him, to which Hutton replied, "I love you, Freddie. I'm not going anywhere." Despite a very serious health condition, Mercury did not stop writing songs. He worked on 3 Queen albums, 2 of which, The Miracle and Innuendo, were released during his lifetime, in 1989 and 1991. Until his death, he continued to work in the studio with Team. These songs would be included on the 1995 album Made in Heaven, but it would already use Fred's recorded voice. Weak and very thin, the musician did not refuse to participate in the filming of music videos, and in order to hide the frontman's condition from the audience, the visuals were done in black and white. Of course, there was no longer any tour in support of the albums. The Queens assured that it was nothing more than their desire to depart from the usual format. The legendary The Show Must Go On was Fred's farewell to this world. Although it was written by May, who even doubted whether the exhausted Mercury could perform such a difficult vocal part, to which Fred tipped over a glass of strong drink and said, "Damn it, I'll do it." The band recorded this song a month before Mercury's death. The last years of Fred's life were no longer so chic and bright. During this period, he was remembered as a very tired man. He rarely appeared in public and spent most of his time in his luxurious home together with his beloved cats. In his memoirs, Elton John recalls, He was too frail to get out of bed. He was losing his sight, his body was covered in Kaposi sarcoma lesions, and yet he was still definitely Freddie, gossiping away, completely outrageous. I couldn't work out whether he didn't realize how close to death he was, or if he knew perfectly well but was determined not to let what was happening to him stop him from being himself. Mercury openly announced his diagnosis on November 23, 1991. He explained his silence by the fact that he did not want to cause trouble and pain to his loved ones. The very next day, the legend was gone. Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, at the age of 45. After his death, almost all of his possessions were burned in accordance with Zoroastrian teachings. Even in the last days of his life, Mercury thought of others. He ordered Christmas presents that were delivered to his friends after his death. Elton John recalls receiving a painting by one of his favorite artists, Henry Scott Tuke, and a note with it, "Dear Sharon, I thought you'd like this. Love, Melina. Merry Christmas." By all rights, Freddie should have spent those final days concerned only with his own comfort, but that wasn't who he was. He truly lived for others. The next year after Mercury's death, Queen gave a benefit concert in his honor. The collected funds of more than $20 million were directed by the band members to the fight against AIDS. Many years have passed, and Mercury is still considered a true legend and the greatest frontman in the history of music, and the Queen no longer had the greatness and popularity they had with Freddie. Even after death, Mercury's image is found everywhere, on British postage stamps, statues, and memorial plaques. He still gathers fans from all over the world. Mike Moran wrote about Mercury. He should be remembered as one of the most iconic artists of the 20th century. He's a great man and wrote great songs. He is just unique. I don't know how his epitaph should sound, but in my opinion, he was a creative person. His sense of humor, his performance style, his compositions, his ambition, his courage, he was all truly original. It's scary to imagine what Freddie Mercury went through in the last period of his life. The disease brought him indescribable physical and mental pain, but all the same, Fred did not want any special treatment for himself, and knowing that the end was near, he continued to create with even greater inspiration and passion. Although he is no longer with us physically, Freddie lives on in his songs, which are still loved by millions of listeners around the world. Friend, if you want to know more stories of other iconic musicians, support us with a like and click on the subscribe button and the bell. We still have many biographies of world-class artists in stock. And that's all for today. It was In Coast Stories, and we don't say goodbye. We say, see you next time.